All right, welcome back to the Seahawks Chat. So, in this segment, I'm going to be talking about one player and one player in particular. In preseason, it seems like everyone's been railing on him in terms of not being able to perform because he had, in my opinion and everyone else's opinion, a bad game. And this is his first game back. So, for me, it's hard for me to truly trash on this player. But I've already seen online that everyone's giving him a bunch of shit already, even though he had such praise in the camp. Everyone says he was the number one camp player, which I've already told everyone on every video that I've made. I don't believe in camp warrior crap. I don't believe in the star camp player. I believe in the player. You play on the field. And Mike Jackson, which is who I'm going to be talking about, did that for us last year. All right, so who's Mike Jackson himself? Let's talk about Mike Jackson. In fact, his name is Mike Jackson Sr. So you guys may not know this, but he's Michael Jackson Sr. He's 26 years old. He's 6'1", 210 pounds. Prototypical size for a Carroll cornerback. He's been in the league for 4 years. This is going to be his fifth year coming into the league. He was a fifth-round pick in 2019 for the Cowboys. His combine, he has a 4.45 speed, which honestly that speed did show. Notably last season when he picked up the fumble recovery from the treacle and block punt, he showed his speed, especially his top end speed near at the end until Tariq Woolen caught up and basically made him look slow. He has a 40.5-inch vert, which is impressive. I did not expect him to jump that high. And he has 32.5-inch arms, which, hey, they're not short and they're not too long. What can you say? But here's the thing with Mike Jackson. Throughout his career, he's actually struggled to get into a team. He struggled to get into a practice squad even. And I don't know if that's just personal issues. I don't know if that's just him not being good in the beginning. It's kind of interesting because Mike Jackson in college, especially in University of Miami, he wasn't exactly prolific, but he was a pretty good cornerback. There wasn't anything terrible about his play. I kind of wish I should have dotted down his college numbers, but in terms of 2019 to 2021, he's already been on four teams. So the Cowboys, which he was drafted, he went to the Lions, and then the Lions traded him to the Patriots. The Patriots released him in 2021. At the end of 2021, that's when the Seattle picked him up and has been in our practice squad, has played in 2021 in terms of snaps, but he played such marginal snaps that I didn't even record it. So he was bare bones, and he's been bare bones from 2019 to 2021. So those 3 year stretch, he has done virtually nothing. Like he hasn't even started a game. That's how disappointing it is to see Mike Jackson's stats. But it's also very interesting how 2022 played out for him. All right. So Carroll brings him in, decides he's good enough to be our second outside cornerback. So Mike Jackson gets the position. In 2022, of course, he plays all 17 games. He basically has his, in my opinion, this is his rookie season, even though he's already been in the league 4 years. At this point in 2022, this would be his fourth year. So in his first full season as a starter, he had 17 games. He had one interception for 22 yards. He had 12 pass deflections. Pretty good, not too bad. At least that's almost one pass deflection a game. Zero forced fumbles, two fumble recoveries, 65 solo tackles, and three tackles for loss. Interesting about the 65 solo tackles, by the way. That's 11th overall in Pro Football Focus says that's the 11th overall best volume of tackles for a cornerback, which is good. That's great. You know how many cornerbacks are in the league? Exactly, it's a lot. So being in the top 15 is awesome. Played really well. That means he's able to finish tackles, which is something that I've addressed before. Seattle and tackling, we got to get better at it. I'm glad Mike Jackson's one that seems to be finishing tackles. It's good. He had 86 targets thrown at him, allowed 48 receptions for 488 yards. That's about 10 yards, over 10 yards a catch average. Now, here's the thing. He did allow a QBR of 75.1, which puts him in the top 15 from I think it was Pro Football Reference or Pro Football Focus. I'm sorry, I saw it in the top 10 because in the top 10, number 10 was 74.9. So if he's only off by point 0.2 points, I'm going to have to put him between the top 12 or top 15 because there's only going to be probably so many corners that can tie that exact amount. But still, that's impressive in terms of quarterback ratings, the QBR rating. He played 93.6% of defensive snaps. That's almost basically 100. It's very rare that he was off the field. That guy played consistently for us, and he played well, and played 16% of special team snaps. And hey, if it wasn't for him playing that one out of the 16%, he wouldn't get that touchdown that I just mentioned earlier from Tariq Woolen. So, what do these all mean? This means that for his first year, his first official year, it's not his rookie year, but for me, I kind of treat it as a rookie year. He did well. I mean, I think he did better than most corners, especially looking statistically. He definitely was starting talent. He definitely is starting caliber talent, and he belongs on a team. So he's with us, which is good. Now, I'm going to go ahead and talk about his contract. He is an exclusive rights free agent, so I'm not too familiar with that. I think in terms of what that might mean, I think a player might have to the team has to be given a first, not a first or a second round pick. I think it's one of those deals where if a team really wants them, they have to give up an actual high draft pick for this player, which makes sense because from what I read stats wise, especially from coming off the season just last year, it was pretty good. In fact, it was worth almost to the point of signing him, like re-signing him. But it's kind of interesting because I think it's better that Seattle did this exclusive rights free agency deal because I didn't think players at the time didn't realize how good he could be. Now here's one thing I did note. Pro Football Focus says his overall is a 60.2, so it's not the best. So I'm a little surprised that Pro Football Focus doesn't like him at all. But I don't know if that's low or bad because I don't really use Pro Football Focus. Like I'm not a big Pro Football Focus guru. Like I'm not all glued into their numbers. I really just use them for like stats. In fact, I think StatMuse is way better than Pro Football Focus. That's just my opinion. In any event, so his contract is 1 year, $940,000, fully guaranteed. I mean, it's fully guaranteed if he plays his season. Now, if we cut him tomorrow, it's zero dead money, and we're saving that $940,000. Now, here's the thing. That's pretty cheap. And in terms of what his production was, that's really cheap for a starting outside cornerback. So I actually did the numbers, and they based off of I don't know if it was over the cap, but there was another website that would estimate value to play, and his play value last year was $7 million base salary. That's how much a team would pay for his services, or his value of play was worth up to that $7 million baseline. That's pretty good. That's at least top 25 in the league of at least top 20 in the league of if he got paid tomorrow $7 million, he would be in the top 20, no doubt. Maybe top 25 between there. But again, we have him for $940,000, full on. Now, I went back and actually looked at the average salary of cornerbacks from the highest paid all the way to the lowest paid. If you average it all together, and let me tell you, because there's a lot of lower paying cornerbacks in general in the league than the top 5 that make like 18 million and up, or 20 million. Like, yeah, 18 million up because there's three players that make 20 million plus. Um, the average cornerback salary is 2.5 million. I didn't think it was cheap. I didn't think that was that cheap. I was expecting it to be like 4 million, maybe, because I thought there would be more higher paid cornerbacks. But it does make sense because there's always rookies that come out, especially later round pick rookies that are cornerbacks. Tariq Woolen's one of them. Kobe Bryant's one of them. I can keep going on, but I'm just going to mention those two because everyone knows those two already. And look at them. They don't cost that much. But at the same time, it's because of their position of draft. It's the same thing with Mike Jackson. Mike Jackson was a fifth-round pick, and he probably saw no more than $600,000. But even then, he was scratched and didn't even make the practice squad when he got drafted by the Cowboys. So it's kind of like interesting because he probably didn't even get any payday until he started playing with the Lions. And even then, they traded him to the Patriots. So I think Mike Jackson is probably happy now that he's making this $1 million because this whole time, he just hasn't like made any money. So maybe he's just happy now to not have to make money. But in any event, so his value play is 7 million. I think that's really, really good for what we're getting in terms of just $1 million. I mean, you guys can do the math. Like, that's solid. So I went back and tried to look for players that made under $2 million or under $3 million, or even their base salary altogether was just over $3 million and had either similar production or could be players that have the ability to have similar production as Mike Jackson did and try to be around the same age, between 26 and 28. Okay? So there was only two that I really could find. There was three really, but there was two that I really could find, and two of them that were getting under $2 million in base pay overall. All right, so number one is Isaiah Oliver. He's 26 years old. He's playing with the 49ers. His base salary is $1.6 million. His overall value of contract is 3.5. He didn't play much last year. He didn't play much at all last year. But that's probably the closest player in terms of ability to make the same production that Mike Jackson did, that is making under $2 million. Another player that I'm going to note, and Seahawks fans actually might love him, is Shaquille Griffin. Griffin was playing with Jacksonville for a little bit until he got hurt. I think he got hurt last year, but he did not play much last year in terms of what I read in his stats. He only played about 4 games total, and he ended up getting cut by Jacksonville. Houston Texans picked him up. His full salary is $3.5 million, bonuses included, but his base pay is $1.5. So if he keeps his play up, he can make $3.5 million in terms of full-on incentives. Now, when I started looking into Mike Jackson's contracts, I didn't really get too detailed into incentives and workout bonuses and all that junk. I didn't. But his whole entire contract is only worth $940,000. So that's still very, very, very cheap for the type of player you're getting out of Mike Jackson, especially since he fits the scheme well with Pete Carroll. Because I really do believe the scheme is benefiting Mike Jackson a lot more than just his style of play or his ability to play, sorry. But his style of play works really well with Carroll's defense right now. So it's a very benefit for him. But Shaquille Griffin, I've already seen in the past that he can do similar production as Mike Jackson. He is 2 years older, but at 26, when I look back when he was playing in Jacksonville, he actually had similar numbers to the same production that Mike Jackson produced now. So it's kind of vice versa to me if you're both comparing them at 26 of their ages. Currently, he's 26. When Shaquille Griffin was 26, he had a similar production, almost, I wouldn't say identical because I do believe Mike Jackson had a better year, but was relatively close to the same borderline of Mike Jackson, just barely a notch lower. Like, and I mean a little notch lower. So, in terms of finding cornerbacks that are making under 3 million baseline that I can highlight that could be actually good, um, I do have one more player to mention. His The thing between him and Mike Jackson is that this player I do believe is more talented than Mike Jackson, is more potential than Mike Jackson. But I honestly think that where he plays is inhibiting him to play better than what he does now. And it made him look worse than what Mike Jackson did. That's what I'm trying to say. Is Mike Jackson is a good player, but I don't truly believe if you put him in another team or in certain other teams, he would not thrive. And I'm saying that also from background experience. Like he went to 3 different teams prior to coming to Seattle. And you know Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll is very open, very honest overall. I mean, all coaches are mostly honest, but I mean like honest in the player. If he didn't see anything that he can make out of Pete Carroll, or Pete Carroll didn't the other way around, Pete Carroll would have probably told him, "Hey, I need you off my team," you know. But he saw a lot of talent in Mike Jackson, and again, seeing the stats in college in the University of Miami, there is some potential there. He played pretty well his junior and senior years there. So it makes sense that Carroll that's Carroll. Once he sees secondary, he wants to make everything and more with it. He loves molding. He loves molding secondary. So, in any event, this next player that I honestly can say is probably the closest thing to Mike Jackson in terms of somewhat production, because his production is lower, of course, but still similar pay, is Asante Samuel Jr. So right now, his base pay is 1.9 million. All right, I don't know much about his incentives and bonuses, whatever. Just his base pay is 1.9. That's $2 million right underneath. All right, that's one. He had played 15 games, had 2 interceptions, 11 pass deflections, 1 pass deflection less, and one fumble recovery, 1 tackle for loss. All right, he allowed 43 receptions. Already showing these numbers are lower than Jackson, except for the games played and just the pass deflects is only one pass deflect less. But at the same time, you can also compensate. He probably would have 13 if he played all 17 games. That's just my analysis on that. But Asante Samuel Jr. had one thing that Mike Jackson did really well. He did not allow nearly as much yards as what Asante Samuels did. So Asante Samuel allowed 626 yards. And this is what's even worse, is that Asante Samuel Jr. allowed a QBR of 95. It was definitely in the lower category. It was far below average in terms of QBRs. So I was surprised that it was that high. Whereas Mike Jackson, again, he's in the top 12 at 75.1. So that's really something to note, that Mike Jackson was shutting down and making quarterbacks worse when they threw it to him, whereas Asante Samuel was somewhat improving quarterbacks when they were thrown to him. So there's something to note there. But at the same time, this production is somewhat similar in terms of defense. He did the things that I'm just impressed with Mike Jackson is after just honestly analyzing everything in front of me and seeing how much production Mike Jackson is producing, not even just from the Carroll scheme, I do have to credit his own ability. It's impressive that he's only worth $1 million. Now, would I extend him in the offseason? That's tough to say because we do have a lot of depth in the cornerback position. I do see Trey Brown being a trade piece because we have to pay him. Now, this is something that I've been mentioning before. We have a lot of depth in the cornerback position. I don't have a problem losing a player equivalent to Trey Brown's talent to acquire better players, or at least a player that will benefit us greatly. Like not just better players, but even one player that it doesn't have to necessarily be better, but because the player fits our scheme so well, it's like Michael Bennett. You know, he fit our scheme so well, he made him a better player. That's what I'm trying to say. Is that I don't have a problem even going as far as if we aren't going to pay Mike Jackson, and I wouldn't say I don't think he will struggle in the regular season, but I also do believe that we have a lot of depth in the cornerback position. Could Mike Jackson be a trade candidate? Could he be a possibility to use as a tool asset to improve the team? I have had some thoughts that maybe that could be the case if we decide to keep Trey Brown. That's the number one question for me is if one, is Trey Brown going to be fully healthy this whole season? And number two, will they believe in him more than Mike Jackson? Because at the end of the day, they're both on their last year contracts. Well, Trey Brown's on the last year, and as you know, he has his one exclusive rights deal, which is his last deal as well. So, would you rather extend Trey Brown or would you rather extend Mike Jackson? Think about that before you comment or how you feel. In my opinion, from what I've seen last year, I'd rather extend Mike Jackson. But I also can understand that there may be more talent upside in Trey Brown. That's why I also don't mind giving a thought of putting Mike Jackson on the trade line and maybe trading him to a cornerback needy team. Before I even get to that last trade possibilities, I want to mention one more player because I actually almost forgot to mention him. So, in terms of me wanting to relate Mike Jackson, since this is his only year, I'm still treating it as his rookie year. There was more rookies that were better than him. Let's be honest. Tariq Woolen, Sauce Gardner. Those are probably the two main ones that I can say. But there's one player that did really stick out to me in terms of how similar his pay is to the type of player he was being for the Saints, and that is Alondre Taylor. Okay, so the one thing that this is going to be his second year in. I didn't really read down his stat. Oh no, yes I did. Sorry. So he started in 9 games. He had 11 pass deflections in 9 games. That's already good. He had 39 tackles, and the one thing that stuck out to me was that he had a QBR of 62. 62. So he was shutting down that side. He was making sure he was locking it up. He was in the top 10 for sure. I think he was in the top 5, but he was in the top 10 list. He had 32 receptions that he allowed for 318 yards. Now, this guy balled out, even though he only made 1.6 million. His base overall. This is including signing bonuses, work, everything. This is his entire pay. They're paying him 1.6 million. That's just above Mike Jackson in terms of pay. But the skill set and productivity is in my opinion probably better, but at the same time not much better. So this is the kind of player that I can compare Mike Jackson to in terms of the rookies, because there were some rookies that were worse, and then there were some rookies that were better. Let's just leave it at that. So I'm gonna go ahead and get back to the trade teams. I did make a rather long list. I think it is 9 teams. I made 9 teams to list off of, but I'm gonna go from the top 5 that I think would be the best trade candidates, or at least these would be the teams that would give up more than usual for services of Mike Jackson. Number 1, the Bears. Number 2, the Falcons. Number 3, the Colts. Number 4, the Ravens. And number 5, the Lions. The funny thing is, I actually don't even want to mention the Lions because that's where Mike Jackson came out of and was traded out of. So it's kind of tough to put the Lions there, but they really do need a legitimate cornerback that they can rely on. And Mike Jackson could be that person for them. So then afterwards, we go number 6. I have the Cleveland Browns. Number 7, the Jacksonville Jaguars. And number 8, the Green Bay Packers. Those 3 teams in particular, I don't even see them trading for a cornerback. I don't even see them trading with Seattle, unless probably Jaguars, probably. But all in all, those are some teams that I can list off of, and those are teams that I can legitimately would think that they would look Mike Jackson another way and be like, hey, that guy is enticing. Maybe we should add him to our squad. And if there's other teams that I'm missing, please put it down below. Let me know what's up. But all in all, that's going to be my opinion on Mike Jackson. I think he did have a bad game. I also do believe that the overhype for him being in camp, being the number 1 camp player, whatever, honestly made his whole beginning of the game, like his first game, just a derailment because we had so much expectations. In fact, it was ungranted expectations. So it's good that Mike Jackson had this fall from grace. Now he can put his footing back up, and he's probably going to have a much better game against the Green Bay Packers. So in terms of trading him, I actually would rather keep him. I think he's more of a viable candidate to have on our team as of now. But I don't also mind using him as a piece to acquire better talent. I have no problem with that as long as the team improves. That's all I care about. But any event, that's my thoughts on Mike Jackson. That's my entire opinion on Mike Jackson. I can understand the justification of our fans roasting him from his one game. But I am going to mention one more time before I leave. He was taking on Jalen Tolbert. If you watch my my last video on preseason predictions, prior to the end of that video, I made a little bit of a segment on Jalen Tolbert that he was by far, he's becoming their number 2 receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. And I truly believe that if he keeps up this preseason, he's going to shine. He's going to definitely be Dak's second favorite. He's going to be like Cole Beasley, but, taller and better. That's kind of a big claim, but Tolbert has been balling out these last 2 games. And I expect nothing less from him if he keeps this up. So I have no shame in how Mike Jackson was treated because it was Mike Tolbert that basically made him look stupid that play. But hey, we all learn. We all clean up our mistakes. And I really do think Mike Jackson is going to do well this year as well in Seattle. And if he doesn't, you know what? There's a reason why we drafted Witherspoon. And there's a reason why Witherspoon is the highest paid cornerback we have in the room. So he needs to earn his money. All right? So in any event, thank you very much. I hope you guys enjoy. If you guys like it, please like it. If you guys want to comment, please comment your guys' opinion. I want to really hear from you guys. So hopefully sometime soon, I would love to hear from you guys. I'm going to try to make another video tomorrow, maybe on another topic. I do have to finish off roster cut videos in terms of who will make the roster cuts. I do have a few more players to talk about. Again, if you guys like my opinion, thank you very much for listening. And all in all, you know how it goes. Go Hawks.